memorial pole. It's a really nice pole. It's in really good condition. There's always that mystique about it. How did one accomplish such, you know, how did they do that? So there's always that mystery about how somebody would carve a totem pole and out of a really big piece of wood and make such beautiful, you know, figures.
This art has kind of a discipline that interests me. It's a very complete kind of art tradition in that it encompasses work in all media and objects of all kinds. And artists who work in this tradition have to have a lot of knowledge. They have to know a bunch of rules, just as rigid rules as any art tradition has, and yet within that framework, good artists are able to use their own inspiration and their own personality come through. So even though there are a lot of rules to the structure of art on the northern coast, good artists were not inhibited by those rules. They were able to come up with original, unique, personal statements.
Just got absorbed into this. It's something that's been in the back of my mind for years. Grew up in Washington and Oregon and was always exposed to this type of art in some form, but until I got here, I never knew there was an outlet for it, a chance for someone to do it. Yeah, I'm not trying to steal anyone's culture. I'm trying to enhance it. If someone does the art and puts the time into it, it's a compliment. It's a very intense, beautiful form of work, and there just aren't a lot of people that will do it.
I don't know. I get lost in carving when I get to carving. The time goes by so fast.
I just love to work with my hands, and sometimes even the frustration of doing something that really doesn't work out too well. Sometimes that can be frustrating, but if you have enough patience and know your tools and know what you're working with, usually you can be able to accomplish, you know, what you set out to do.
It really means a lot because I've always wanted to be on this canoe project because my grandfather was a master carver in his day. He did a lot of projects as canoes, totems, and other artwork. So it's really a continuation of his work.
I started getting interest in carving when I was about 5 years old. I used to watch my dad carve. He never did the big masks and the big poles like I've learned how to do. He mostly stuck to painting designs and carving real small things like earrings, etc., etc. But I used to watch him carve, and I said, man, I want to do that someday, you know. And all through school, I was always an artist. I always drew on my math papers, and you know, I was going to be an artist. And when I was in 6th grade, I'll never forget it. At the beginning of the year, the teacher would ask us, "What are you going to be when you grow up?" And I stood up. Well, I was real proud. Said, "I'm going to be an artist." And he said, "Artists don't make beans for a living." Boy, that just crushed me. But at the same time, made me mad, and made me just, I said, I'm going to be an artist. They couldn't change my mind.
For others of a like mind who also wish to pursue careers in Northwest Coast art traditions, there are a variety of opportunities. New projects are commissioned every year, and a number of classes allow students to learn from master carvers.
If you're endeavoring to be an artist, the more important thing in the earlier stages of being an artist is drawing. Because you're trying to come up with a likeness, trying to copy. make that transfer from what you see to what you're putting on the paper. After over a period of time, you can develop it through practice. The cliche of practice makes perfect. I think you spend a lot of time even developing styles.
Just as learning to be an artist starts with paper, that's also where Nathan Jackson starts carving his totem poles.
This is what the pole's supposed to look like when it gets done here.
Whenever I do something, you have to start with paper. You have to take it to a sketch pad. I usually take and draw something 1 inch to the foot. And so it gives me something to play with, not not a real small scale, because it's harder to get a lot of detail in. I think if I was doing it, you know, from scratch, I'd probably go out and select a log. Just go in the woods, go in areas that they've been logging, or where there have been pretty well noted good trees, good straight-grained trees. And usually where there wouldn't be hardly any wind, and pretty much in a valley type area, so that there'd be no stresses involved or weather checks. And the top of the tree would have to be with a lot of branches, and the trunk area would have to be pretty clear. After getting it down, then I'd shore it up, then use a chainsaw mill to cut the cedar bark, the bark off, and also line it up straight with a board, and end up with 4 corners on it, and flat on the back. And then I'd hollow out the back of the log. I'd establish a line on there. Then I start chopping away in areas that is round. And then lay out the design, and usually end up carving one side first and then carve the other side, so I can see what I want. As far as rules in the carving, in working with wood, usually, or sometimes, you have a tree that has a slight twist to it. So you have to take into account what is happening to your wood. And so usually there's always, in the design aspect of it, planes, so that you don't have something splinter on you. And in order to make patterns with the adze, all the grains got to be pretty much the same in order to get the symmetry as far as one side to the other. I guess with the raising of a pole or something like that, I've done some poles where I didn't even stick around for it being raised, because there are other things to me are more important, and that's my family. I've had commissions during the fall season where it started coming up towards the winter season, and you can see snow on the mountains already. And with that, I know that I'm not going to stick around if my family's burning wood. I'm not going to stick around to even watch it being raised, because that to me, that is a more of a priority, is my family. About feeling of accomplishment when they are up, sometimes they look a little different than when they're down on the ground. I think they look better when they're up, and that's what they're made for anyway. And so I do feel kind of good about it.
Most Southeast communities display totem poles, and a few, like Wrangell, have tribal houses. Chief Sheikh's house was replicated in 1939 to match the house built on the site in the early 1800s. By 1984, the house posts inside were showing their age and needed to be replaced. Wayne Price was one carver who wanted to work on the project.
I remember in my very early years working with Leo Jacobs, and he would tell me, he would say, they're going to dupe those poles someday. You get good, keep at it. That's your goal, you know.
The totem project's been a long-time goal of many people here in the community. We received a total of $260,000 in state and federal monies to do the restoration project. It incorporates Shakes Island and the totem poles on the tribal house, as well as 4 totems that were standing within the community of Wrangell that were taken down in 1981. And the first phase of the project was the restoration of this house and the duplication of the 4 house posts, and recarving 2 figures on the 2 totems just outside the house, as well as some restoration work on 5 of the totems. When we first started the project, we were looking for carvers who were not only highly skilled in carving, but also skilled within replication work. There's a big difference between doing replication work and original totem. With original totem, the carver's allowed to use his style of carving. With replication, you want as close to the original, right down to the same number of adze marks.
It's really pretty interesting, and it forces you to look much more closely than you ever would otherwise. You actually get so far into there that you start to have dreams about it.
It was kind of nice, too, to be able to go over and duplicate something that the originals are somewhere around 200 to 250 years old, and duplicate work that was been done that long time ago compared to what I'd been doing prior to the house post, which was all of my own designs, etc., etc. And then to do something that was old like that is really quite an honor. And a lot of the secrets that only woodcarvers know, Steve and I have learned off the house posts.
We not only learned a lot about it, but we stand to pass on some of that knowledge and greater understanding of some of the history of the carving before much European contact had taken place. Things that had been collected and from the time the house posts were made, which was before 1800.
Accepting the fact of not using any power tools and learning how to take our time and measure everything. We like to say we got everything within about 1/8 of an inch of the old ones. And there were some pieces missing off the old house posts that we had to improvise on.
The figure on the bottom of the pole is a bit different than you've seen in most poles. The face above it was not even there on the original. Wayne and Steve had to do a lot of consulting and acquiring photographs of other totems that they felt this particular carver had done, and kind of put a composite together, and that's what they came up with. The original was hacked away during a potlatch at one time. So Chief Shakes was trying to impress a guest into showing that these poles were not that important to him, and that was one way of doing it, is just simply, destroying it.
A variety of efforts have been made to preserve these old carvings. In the 1930s, the Civilian Conservation Corps hired carvers to replicate and restore deteriorating totem poles. In the 1970s, efforts were made to collect and preserve original totem poles that still remained. These poles were brought to the Totem Heritage Center in Ketchikan. Many now come to the center to view the original poles. Others come to take part in a variety of native art classes and workshops.
We started the Island Carvers 2 workshop with Jack Hudson leading a session on making halibut hooks. And he's a Tsimshian carver from Metakatla. Then we had 2 ongoing workshops after the halibut hooks were done. One was Steve Brown leading a workshop on the making of a 16-foot cedar canoe, and that was outside. And inside the building, we had Bill Holm teaching about a dozen carvers the making of raven rattles. And he is one of the key people who's kept the Northwest Coast native arts alive during a time when a lot of people weren't practicing it.
See, I think probably be a good idea for you to take some of this shoulder off. Taper it more so that it's not quite so round here. Well, taper it in here a little bit.
Oh, I see.
So that it's not come out so much, and especially underneath the wing. In this group of students, I guess we'll have to call them, we really have a bunch of professional artists. These are all people who've had experience. Some of them make their living at art, and so I'm not teaching them how to hold a crooked knife or even how to organize a design. What I'm doing is giving them a benefit of a lot of years of experience at looking at these objects and photographing them. So I have pictures of hundreds, literally hundreds of raven rattles.
Is it that head there hollowed out underneath the easy eye in there?
Yeah, it is.
Is it hollowed out back like that?
Which head? This one?
Yeah, right up where you had it. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, it's hollowed out like that.
Back inside,
Yeah.
underneath.
Yeah. The rattle is in the form of a bird. It's usually a raven. The head extends out one end in a kind of an arch. The body forms the rattle itself, and the tail of the bird, of the raven, is turned up in the back end of the rattle and forms the head of another bird. On the back of this raven is always a reclining figure, usually a man, always a human figure, sometimes with an animal face. Always on the breast of the rattle is another face with a hooked beak. Now, I'm not about to try to explain what the meaning of those figures is, because nobody really knows today.
It's one of the hardest carvings I had to do yet, mainly because of just trying to figure out where you could begin to carve first. And then having to figure out where you're going to carve under the narrow legs and arms without breaking it. It's just one of the hardest carving chores I've had. I shouldn't call it a chore, but after this, the mask will seem simple.
These halibut hooks are carved to be effectively shaped fishing implements and aesthetically pleasing to the spirit of the halibut. They also appear to be a simple project.
Well, it looks that way, but you have to know how to do it. You know, there's some engineering here that goes in here. The Indians knew about it. I just made copies. You know, I do it just like the old Indians did long ago. Carvings on halibut hooks all have something to do with helping you to catch halibut, and so the student carved an octopus on there. That's the head part there, and these are his legs. And here's the hook here, carved and ivory. And it's wrapped on there. You have to be able to get your hand in there like that. He's got it all wrapped here, see? And then there'll be a hole here, right in the balance area, right about in there. And it'll be up there, and the hook will be like this. See?
Living in a marine environment, the natives of Southeast Alaska also had to know about building canoes. It's a craft that's been resurrected in the past few years.
Really, you can talk about how these things are done, and of course doing models you learn a lot, but then it's a whole nother thing, a whole nother feeling to do this full size, even relatively small like this, 14 feet, but we'll be able to put at least 3 people in here when we're done. Something that we spent a few days, a week, or maybe a couple of days more than that, if we can drum up the time. Finish this off and actually go out paddling around in something that we created right here, and by taking off chip after chip and leaving them behind. So the value, I guess, can be measured in terms of understanding what the old-timers did and what they went through in order to create these, and also some of the thought processes, and gaining a greater appreciation for the design that they built into this craft to begin with. Years and years and years, generations of experience that those old-timers put into this, and we're trying to get in touch with that.
This is the first canoe to be carved in Canyon in I don't know how long, probably since the turn of the century, so you don't see too many of these type of boats in Southeast, in the waters at least. So it just adds to my experiences as a carver. Maybe something I can tell my grandchildren when I get old. I don't know. I'm just likely I'm learning, so it's a great learning experience.
Learning experiences abound for those wanting to know more about Northwest Coast art. For example, there are culture camps, university classes, and community school programs. They feature instruction from those practicing traditional art forms, like David Boxley, a carver from Metlakatla.
This is really looking good. Looking a lot good. I think my philosophy last year, and I carried over this year with the beginners, was that I wanted them to come to class to learn something, to be able to go home and by themselves create something. And in the past, you know, and possibly in the past, they'd been given designs, traced the designs, put them on the wood, carved them, and went home with something, but didn't learn how to do it themselves. And that's really important to me, is the passing on of this, the ability to go away and do it on their own.
Developing the interests of young people in Native culture is also a goal of Alaska Indian Arts in Haines. It began as a Boy Scout program and is now a marketing outlet for professional artists, but it still attracts beginners like Joe Price.
I guess I first got the idea of working here when I you know, came up here one time. I saw this stuff around. I thought, oh, this is great, you know. But then I came back this year, and Mr. Heinmiller said, well, you'll start, you know, taking out garbage and this and that, and if you're interested, you can start painting and carving or whatever. I said, oh, it's great, you know. Because when I was, I don't know, about 3rd or 4th grade, I took a class from Charlie Jimmy way back when, and I don't know how well I did, but I thought it was just, you know, monstrous. So here I am back again. I don't know if I'll be a carver or not. If I start, you know, carving and I do well, I might go into it. But I like the idea of painting better.
One of Joe Price's teachers is Charlie Jimmy. Charlie has been carving at Alaska Indian Art since 1964. Like his current students, he also learned from other artists.
I was a roughhouse man, more or less. And so as soon as I roughed out the mask or roughed out the piece that I was doing, I'd either give it to Leo or Fenton. And that is the way we did it to the faster, better carvers at the time. So then I started carving quite a bit to the guys. And I learned by just being with them and asking them questions, you know. And I think it's kind of nice for me to be in this atmosphere where I can look at work and get ideas too. And, you know, they get ideas from what I do or whatever, you know. I love my artwork and I love the dance, and the culture is what we're trying to promote now.
Well, do you think that the artwork, though, is kind of in safe hands with the next generations? Or?
That depends. That depends. How much longer it'll hang on, I really don't know, because the many youngsters that are learning about Northwest, whether they will continue, that depends upon them.
These examples of early Northwest Coast art are saved here at the Alaska State Museum. And being saved, they help keep alive the ties between our current times and earlier cultures. We'll be back again next week for another rain country adventure and meet some more of our current Southeast neighbors. Hopefully you'll join us then. I'm Scott Foster.